more traditional hate, Frank Weltner has a site called Jew Watch, which has been the subject of problems at Google because people got upset because if you Google the word Jew, most of the time this site, Jew Watch, is going to show up first because Jew is like every other word on the site. And Google, a lot of people don't understand. They said, well, maybe Google's being paid, that's why it's showing up first. Google works on algorithms. They had nothing to do with it. You know, however many times it's going to be in there, that's where it's going to show up. So they actually, in a rare case, they actually put a disclaimer explaining when you Google the word Jew, you'll get a disclaimer which says why this site or why sites like this would show up first. For a long time, they just ignored it, and then they after hundreds of thousands of letters, they decided they should do something about it. Now, I would be remiss, given the venue that we're in, not to talk a little bit about denial of the Holocaust, because this is a subject that on the surface sounds like it's absolute crackpots. They don't know anything. They're easily, they're easily put to shame, but it's not the case. There are dozens of Holocaust denial sites online. And this one, Heretical Press, is from the UK, but again, it's using an American server. And others, this is one on Facebook, 6,000 for Truth About the Holocaust. Another Facebook site from Latin America, again, all on American servers. This one, I had a video which I would have liked to show you, but this is one called The Real Nazi Death Camps. And if you're familiar with the Holocaust at all, what this shows is a video from the camp at Theresienstadt. And Theresienstadt was used as a model camp, so they didn't take the Red Cross or people into the Camp 3 at Auschwitz, the death camp, but what they did is they wanted to show somebody what's going on in these concentration camps where they put all these Jews. They took them to Theresienstadt. And the video actually shows where they have a comedy show, they have a library, they have all these things. They dressed up the inmates before the cameras came. Then after they were gone, they took the clothes back and shipped those people off to Auschwitz to be gassed. But it's a very disturbing video, and it gives the idea that this is what it was really like in the concentration camps. But I have to say that discussing Holocaust denial with people, the whole idea of Holocaust denial is to pique people's interest. Years ago, one of the large Holocaust denial organizations got the idea to take out full-page ads in campus newspapers. And they did not go to Podunk State in Montana. They went to Harvard, they went to Duke, they went to UCLA and USC, and sent prepaid ads to all these schools. Many of the schools decided not to publish it. Some of the schools, such as Duke, did. And they got exactly the reaction they wanted, because when the outrage came, at Duke they had a public forum, and one professor said, well, if they come here, we'll be happy to debate them. No, you don't want to debate these people. It's like Dr. Salk discussing polio with a witch doctor. You don't talk to these people. There is not a discussion about Holocaust denial. And I've had the opportunity to be both sides of this because I've attended Holocaust denial meetings, but I've also, if you ever want to have some fun, you take a group of Jewish kids from USY, United Synagogue Youth, and you go into the room and you impersonate a Holocaust denier for about 5 minutes. You want to see mass hysteria. Some of them have, grandparents that are survivors and so forth. And it gets people riled up, and that's exactly what they want, because when people are riled up, when they hear this on the radio, so forth, then they start quoting facts, or attempt to quote facts, and they're usually wrong. People cannot argue with these people unless they are very, very good at it. As it happens, one of the best people to ever argue with these people was a discussion that took place online, and it was a woman that lived right here in Richmond by the name of Stephanie Brumlick. And she is one of the few people that could actually argue with these people. Some of the historians have been on the witness stand in trial in Canada, the Zundel case, and made mistakes. But there is a great discussion online. It goes over 3,000 posts, and if anybody ever wants to see it, I'll be happy to point you to it. But you don't argue with these people, you don't try to debate with them, and unfortunately too many people do. So, but I did want to mention that subject because it's one of the early things we found online, and we still find it out there today. Unfortunately, the video is not going to work. This is also on holocaustfact.com, which, again, on an American server, comes from Syria. It's in 3 different languages. Holocaust denial has become a big thing in the Middle East. They actually tried to hold a conference in Jordan some years ago. Holocaust is not the only subject that we find, changing history online. This is a site that on the surface looked like it was dedicated to Dr. King. It was actually mlking.org is the URL. And on the surface, they originally had a picture of Dr. King and his family, which they made him change. But this is actually a site that denigrates Dr. King, that talks about the death of the dream and so forth, because even though they had the URL mlking.org, this was put online by Stormfront, the site that I showed you earlier. Cyber squatting was a big thing early on. Then, there's also one thing on the history. We've also had sites which, for example, they take the old Currier and Ives pictures from slavery, and they say, well, look at these pictures here from Currier and Ives, and they show smiling slaves and so forth. So maybe slavery wasn't so bad. I'm not sure Currier and Ives ever were, came and saw slavery firsthand, but I'm sure the slaves weren't smiling. The last subject I want to mention briefly is terrorism, because this has again added a whole new wrinkle to the subject, with some of the laws that have been passed dealing with terrorism. It makes for an interesting discussion in the area of free speech. One is advice for lone wolves, which I mentioned earlier. For example, Jihad Jane, the woman from Pennsylvania that had connected with people literally all over the world, and she, by doing it using MySpace. Then this is an interesting one, because this is posted on YouTube. It's actually a guy, when it was first posted, it didn't identify who it was. It turns out when we did some research that he was actually an American-born imam, and he's talking about, well, what happens when someone insults the Prophet, and he talks about having been emailed a picture from a French newspaper, and the person emailed said, well, should we protest the newspaper, should we picket? And his response is, and if I had the video, you'd hear it, his response is, what we really need is a hero to chop off the neck of the guy who did it. I think that's how some people deal with the issue of free speech. So given that, that's the video, which we're going to skip. Then we have online on American servers again, we have fatwas. This one is about are Palestinian women allowed to carry out suicide bombings, which the answer eventually is yes, they should be able to participate in jihad. Another one is about, is it okay to seek martyrdom by attacking American troops in the Gulf? And again, the answer is yes. And then this particular one is an American branch of a group called Hizb ut-Tahrir, which is a group that promotes the idea of the Khilafah, or a worldwide Islamic government, who had a conference in Illinois this past summer, and the name of the conference was the Fall of Capitalism, the Rise of Islam. So with these, especially with the terrorism field and some of these more disturbing sites that talk about, fatwas that are okaying death of American soldiers, and so it brings to light and brings into prominence the famous quote by Justice Jackson in the 1949 case, when he said, in a dissenting opinion, when he said that the Constitution is not a suicide pact. And it gives pause to how we approach, especially with the internet, because again, the video about what to do about insulting the Prophet of Islam is one of those things that inspired people like Jihad Jane and others. And sticking with Rod's idea of the 60s music, you have to wonder, are we on the eve of destruction? Thank you.